Hey guys, let's get more news about Steelers, but first don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Batco, Will Howard carries himself with more gravitas than your typical 6th-round pick. Though just a 6th-round pick, Will Howard is filling some Steelers fans with hope, perhaps finding a hidden gem. The national champion Ohio State quarterback should spend his rookie season as the third quarterback, assuming he who shall not be named shows up. But that won't prevent the eyes from naturally drifting to Howard whenever he is on the field. Such was the case this past weekend when the Steelers held their rookie minicamp. Multiple reporters shared their thoughts about their first impressions of Howard, one saying he looked very comfortable. You can count Brian Batco among those who found himself impressed after his first look at the rookie. It's almost cliché to say at this point, but Will Howard really does carry himself with more gravitas than your typical 6th-round pick, he wrote in a recent chat session. While he allowed that might be partially due to his position, there was more. I was impressed, and it's easy to see why coaches and players seem to really like the guy. Despite being a 6th-round pick, Steelers fans don't even want to hear the notion that Will Howard will have to make the team. Of course he will make the team, he's Will Howard, after all, right? Well, there's still a long way to go before September, and rookie minicamp doesn't mean much by that point. But while Batco is resistant to lofty comparisons for the rookie, he does see the talent and poise. I do like Will Howard and, more important, I'm pretty comfortable saying there are people in the Steelers organization who really like Will Howard and thought he was a much better prospect than where they landed him, he wrote. Will Howard is the first quarterback the Steelers have drafted since 2022, when they selected Kenny Pickett in the 1st round and Chris Oladokun in the 7th. Both are Super Bowl champions since leaving the Steelers, though of course, they were watching from the sideline. But it's a lot closer than any Steelers quarterback has come in some years. Will Howard probably isn't going to swoop in and usher forth another dynasty, but, hey, his career is just beginning. And maybe he'll win a Super Bowl with the Ravens in a few years. In the meantime, we'll just watch and take notice of how he develops. Most of us won't actually get to see him in action until the preseason, but he should play a lot then. Aaron Rodgers will fall apart if he plays too much, and Mason Rudolph has played with the Steelers for most of his career. Will Howard is the new guy and a rookie, so he would understandably get a lot of work. Poise, demeanor, and leadership are things that matter at the quarterback position more than most. For whatever it's worth, Will Howard does seem to have those qualities. But what the Steelers ultimately want is someone who can pass accurately, throw down the field, protect the football, and score points. If he can do that, then maybe they're onto something. Bengals' Trey Hendrickson mess just gave Steelers a valuable lesson. If you're anxious about the Pittsburgh Steelers getting T.J. Watt locked up to a long-term contract, it's nothing compared to the nightmare the Cincinnati Bengals are going through with star pass rusher Trey Hendrickson. Hendrickson had a tremendous 2024 that marked his 2nd straight season, earning 17.5 sacks while raking in first-team All-Pro honors. The Bengals star also finished as the runner-up for the Defensive Player of the Year award. Understandably, Hendrickson wants to be paid like a superstar, but Cincinnati isn't budging. Now Hendrickson is breaking his silence to bash the organization that refuses to pay him market value. No communication has taken place between my camp and the organization post-draft, Hendrickson told ESPN, per Adam Schefter. The offers prior to the draft did not reflect the vision we shared and were promised last offseason if I continued to play at a high level. Coaches are aware of these past conversations. Henderson wasn't finished with his rant, and he placed the blame directly on the shoulders of Cincinnati's front office. Rather than using collaboration to get us to a point to bring me home to the team, they are no longer communicating, Hendrickson continued. I have been eagerly awaiting a resolution of this situation, but that's hard to do when there is no discussion and an evident lack of interest in reaching mutual goals. If you want an example of what not to do when handling the contract situation of your best defender, look no further. There's an argument to be made that the Cincinnati Bengals shouldn't hand Trey Hendrickson the contract he's seeking. The talented pass rusher is now in his 30s, and the edge rusher market saw a complete reset when Myles Garrett broke the bank, earning $40 million per season on his new deal. The Pittsburgh Steelers will have internal conversations of their own when it comes to TJ Watt. The future Hall of Famer will turn 31 years old early in the season and is coming off a down year in 2021. But we know what the market will be, and Watt is seeking a deal in the ballpark of what Garrett received. However, the last thing the Steelers can afford to do is wreck their relationship with Watt the way the Bengals have carelessly handled the Hendrickson situation. These discussions need to stay behind closed doors. The Pittsburgh Steelers need to learn from the Bengals' mistakes in the Trey Hendrickson fiasco. The last thing we want to see is TJ Watt bashing the team for being unwilling to negotiate a new deal. Shedeur Sanders is extremely not on the Steelers. Maybe you remember those 3 days when that was all anyone could talk about? Sanders' draft fall was the topic of the NFL draft last month, and you'd think that now that we're well past it and heading towards the most exciting Wednesday afternoon in the history of sports, the NFL schedule release, that we'd all move on. But nope. That's not how content works. The rules of content allow us to revisit things literally whenever we want, for literally any reason we want, as long as Google finds it compelling. And, I gotta say, it's awfully convenient during the NFL offseason. For instance, ESPN dropped a big list of draft intel just because they could. See? Very convenient. In said list of draft intel, they even talk a little bit about how close the Steelers were to drafting Sanders. Spoiler alert, it's underwhelming, but not quite underwhelming enough to ignore. It got my click, at least. NFL Insider links Pittsburgh Steelers to trade for Green Bay Packers receiver. Both the Green Bay Packers and Pittsburgh Steelers have been involved in various rumors to acquire a star wide receiver this offseason. The Steelers made those reports come true when they traded for DK Metcalf prior to the 2025 NFL Draft. Meanwhile, the Packers chose to take a chance on potential by selecting Texas' Matthew Golden with the 23rd overall pick in the first round. Though, the Steelers have since cleared some more space in their receiver room by trading George Pickens. The Packers haven't executed a similar move to clear a bigger path for Golden to hit the ground running, though they already have extra opportunities available due to Christian Watson's ongoing ACL surgery recovery. However, Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer believes the Steelers and Packers could be perfect trade partners before the season officially kicks off. Specifically, Breer thinks the Steelers could register some interest in trading for Packers veteran receiver Romeo, who was suspended from the team for personal reasons late during the 2024 season. Of course, the Aaron Rodgers-Due connection could also work in Pittsburgh's favor after the quarterback/receiver duo played together on the Packers in 2022. Due, fresh off becoming a fourth-round pick, tallied 42 receptions for 425 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's hovered just above 600 yards in each of the past 2 years, but the 25-year-old may be primed for a bigger role, whether it's in Pittsburgh or by remaining in Green Bay. And you fan? What do you think about Romeo Due situation? Write in the comments.